the sun.
Let's listen to Pavarotti.
Only one.
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. Now, in this video, I'm going to get into some controversial things. I'm going to take some hits for this one. I always take hits for everything I do, no matter what, so that's not new to me, and I'm not one that shies away from taking hits from folks, but in this one, I'll probably be taking hits from the community that conveys that they believe Bryan Kohberger is innocent, or at the very least, they believe that he is innocent until proven guilty, and lean on the innocent side. Because I've noticed in the narrative that's going around now, and this narrative is going to be, in my opinion, disastrous for Mr. Kohberger in keeping the atmosphere out there on an anywhere near even playing field, on an even keel. See, what they're stating now is the IGG is what led to Kohberger, although they're trying to paint it as the IGG was the only thing that led to Kohberger, and they arrested him based off that, so it's not right. But what they're unwittingly doing is they're basically proving the prosecution's case and sealing Kohberger's fate. Now, folks, you go back 200 videos, and I've done it probably 15 times. Whenever I get around December 19th, I tell you, and I've said this many, many times in the videos, this is where you have to make a decision for yourself. Then that decision is very clear. It is either one of two things. Either number one, the IGG is the confidential informant, and the IGG led to Bryan Kohberger at approximately December 19th. Or a confidential informant, an actual person, somehow gave up Bryan Kohberger's name, and then the FBI reverse engineered an IGG in a very swift manner because they did not want to disclose the identity of that confidential informant because of the ramifications that would have come from that. And then the IGG was pointed to as the confidential informant. There's no other choices. You must believe one or the other. But I'm going to show you in this video what the ramifications are if you believe the IGG is real. And there's no other way around it, and I think you'll agree with me once I'm done with this. Now, the bad thing is, I'm going to show how an investigation would be a completely legitimate investigation that would lead to a conviction to Bryan Kohberger, if you believe the IGG is real. But then I will show you the alternative, which I believe to be real, and the confidential informant is not the IGG. The IGG was never real, and I'm not going to get into all the details about how the IGG couldn't be real, but I'm going to show you what happens when the IGG is real and when it's not. You're probably going to want to watch this one, and I'm going to take some heat, but you know what? It's cold outside. I could probably use a little extra heat right now. So, again, it's either the confidential informant or the IGG, one or the other. First, we're going to start with the ramifications if you choose IGG. And this is how it would work, folks. Starting on November 13th, 2022, the atrocity. That means that law enforcement found a K-bar knife sheath. On the button snap, they were able to produce a touch DNA sample, which the Idaho State Police then on November 20th was able to complete an STR profile, a full profile, and enter it into CODIS. They did not get a match. So on November 29th, 2022, that same sample was submitted to Othram Labs to create an SNP profile and begin an investigative genetic genealogy investigation. Now, nobody knows, including the court, because it states in the court docs, even the judge doesn't know when the FBI retrieved that sample from Othram Labs, but somewhere along the way it says that they did. Now, FBI, if you believe this scenario, then enters that S&P profile that was created by Othram Labs illegally into a 23andMe database. By doing that, and because either Kohberger or Kohberger's sister or somebody in their family was in that 23andMe database, that it was able to produce cold hits. And those cold hits resulted in a completed investigation into the IGG producing Bryan Kohberger as the possible suspect on December 19th, 2022. And then the FBI gave that lead to law enforcement. If you believe this, then the only thing illegal about any of this was the fact that the FBI submitted it to 23andMe, where they're not supposed to do that because that's an opt-out company. However, you're also believing that that is Bryan Kohberger's DNA on that knife sheath, and when they entered it into the 23andMe database, it produced not just Kohberger's name, but it produced several names. The percentages from my research would be somewhere between 100 and 120 relatives would be named by doing that. So here's what would happen from there. With that completed S&P profile from Othram Labs, as soon as the FBI entered it into the 23andMe database, it would produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 potential matches. Now, because if this truly was Kohberger's DNA, the majority of those matches would be from family that Kohberger has in the Pennsylvania area. And then the majority of the other matches are going to be in the states surrounding the Pennsylvania area. And law enforcement would be able to, the FBI especially, would be able to go through and verify their addresses in a very swift manner and eliminate about 90 of those results from the search immediately. And that would leave roughly 30 familial matches that would be spread out across the United States. So those matches would look something like this. You see all of these little green dots? I mean, they could be scattered in many places all over the United States. Again, it wouldn't take the FBI very long to eliminate the majority of them due to not living in the area. But then they would notice a resident of the WSU University that is in that area that is a familial match, and they would zero in on that person in a matter of no time. So according to that theory, then law enforcement would have provided the Moscow Police Department a lead on December 19th, 2022, and say, here you go, we got this guy, Bryan Kohberger, who is a match, and he is in your area. Then Brett Payne would then look up, well, does Kohberger drive a Hyundai Elantra? And he would find out, yes, he does. How would he do that? Real simple. He would check the database of the 22 Elantras that they cataloged, and then he would find out that one of the WSU police officers cataloged his Elantra on November 29th, 2022. And then, just like we heard in court, he would call that WSU police officer and he would get the particulars of that potential vehicle. Then, between December 20th, when Payne talked to that WSU officer, and December 23rd, when he filed the first AT&T warrant, he would pull up Kohberger's driver's license. He would notice on his driver's license, just like the PCA says, hey, he's got bushy eyebrows, he's 6 foot tall, 180 pounds. He matches Mortensen's description of him. he would then check his license plate, and he would see that he has a Pennsylvania plate that was set to expire on November 30th. And then upon further investigation, just like the PCA says, he would find out that Kohberger transferred those tags to Idaho on November 18th, 2022. Then he would have researched and found out that Kohberger actually produced a Reddit survey once he realized he was a student in the criminology department at WSU, and he would have looked up that Reddit survey and looked at what it contained and said, that looks suspicious. Then he would have found out that Pennsylvania did not require a front license plate. So during the time of the atrocity, Kohberger's Elantra would not be displaying a front license plate because he didn't change those plates until November 18th. That would be all he would need to get the first AT&T warrant, along with the FBI and their identification of the Hyundai Elantra, changing it from 2011 and 13 to 2011 to 16, which they did not do, but Mr. Payne did all on his own. So that's pretty cut and dry. If you believe the IGG is real, then the IGG simply produced a lead. Once they had the lead, everything in that PCA would line up just perfect. And they would have got the AT&T warrants, and they would have secured arrest warrants. And then when they got his buccal swab after the arrest, they would have matched it to the original STR profile. It's a 5.07 octillion match. You got your guy. So based on everything that y'all are saying, that this IGG led to Kohberger, you just proved that Kohberger is Ted Bundy. Congratulations. Me, I happen to not believe that because I've actually looked into the details of the case, and it has nothing to do with an IGG. But if you stop and you really think about it, what are the ramifications at the end of this thing? Why did they use the IGG as the smokescreen? Because there's more reason than one, I assure you. But you can make no mistake. This was planned out by law enforcement in advance, and they planned it out in a very detailed strategy to try to make everything look picture perfect. The only thing that they did wrong was they sent that little IGG S&P profile into a database they weren't supposed to. That is going to be their claim. And they're doing it on purpose. I'm going to show you in a minute why they're doing that. So once again, let me show you what you believe. You believe the IGG, you believe Kohberger's guilty. Because Kohberger plus the knife sheath, that's his DNA on it, equals IGG, folks. You literally believe the PCA. Here's what you literally believe. Again, you believe that the DNA on the knife sheath was sent to Othram Labs. They created an S&P profile with their IGG. The FBI got the IGG back from them, put it in 23andMe, and produced a lead, Bryan Kohberger, after eliminating the other people the IGG produced. Then you believe that the FBI, because they used 23andMe in their IGG to produce the lead, decided to hide the IGG because of that. And then Payne plus his PCA minus the IGG hidden due to 23andMe equals Bryan Kohberger is guilty. Do you really believe that? Because if you believe the IGG, you really do. So if you believe on December 19th that they got Kohberger's name from a legal IGG and that's what led to Kohberger, guess who you align with? You align with the belief of Brett Payne. You align with the belief of Bill Thompson. You align with the belief of the FBI. And you align with the belief of none other than the Drunk Turkey Show. Because that has been the Drunk Turkey Show's opinion theory for as long as I can remember. He has consistently said that they got Kohberger's name from the secret IGG on December 19th. So if you're lining up with that, you're lining up with the drunk turkey theory. Now, if what y'all believe is true, then this is the only outcome of this thing. Bryan Kohberger will be found guilty, and the FBI will be reprimanded for using 23andMe. Yeah, they're gonna get hit hard by a lot of talk from a lot of people for doing that. Oh, it'll be just terrible. Why would the FBI do that? Unfortunately, after about 6 months, all that talk will go away. Then the whole narrative out there in the mainstream will change all of a sudden. In fact, people will start pointing to how the use of that investigative genetic genealogy actually led to the conviction of Bryan Kohberger, and nothing else would have. Congress will convene and they will praise the use of the IGG to catch Kohberger, and then they will enact a new bill giving the FBI full authority to be able to use 23andMe, Ancestry.com, and anything else they want to use going forward in their state-of-the-art IGG investigations. And then anything that happens that they want to put you in prison for in the future, they'll be able to do using the roadmap of the Bryan Kohberger case. Oh yeah, and since it was the IGG and not the use of confidential informants by law enforcement, guess whose butts will be covered in this? Well, Brett Payne, number one, he'll be seen as a hero. Bill Thompson, he'll be seen as the best prosecutor in the country. Megan Marshall, she'll never even be asked about releasing Farley on furlough. How about Kathy Mabbitt? She'll never be asked about being Farley's attorney. How about John Judge? He'll never be asked about that Rule 11 plea agreement that he accepted. And how about the FBI? They'll be totally in the clear. What about that Quad Cities Drug Task Force? They'll be free to go and turn every college student in that town, in both towns, into confidential informants, and deaths will continue to happen. Wow, those are some butts that are covered and some pretty strong ramifications just from believing the IGG. So folks, you must choose, and you must choose wisely, because it really does matter. Because if you choose the IGG, then the narrative out there in the sphere is going to be, they got to Kohberger through illegal means, but he is the assailant. We don't care how they got to him. We just want justice. Guilty, get rid of him. The IGG is a great thing. Or you believe it was actually a confidential informant, and then the IGG was the cover-up, and that cover-up is hoping to have other consequences going forward. That's what you must choose. Now, let's look at the other alternative, the confidential informant. And I'm going to give you my determination of the investigation I've conducted into this case, and you can choose to believe that or not. But if you choose to believe it's a confidential informant, then for some reason they're hiding that informant and hiding him enough to where they're covering it up with an IGG. So there must be a dang good reason. I think I'm correct on this. I'll let you decide. So on November 13th, 2022, they recovered a knife sheath from the crime scene. I believe it was put there by Sergeant Gunderson, Farley's cousin. And they retrieved an incomplete DNA sample from the knife sheath. Because it was touch DNA on a brass button snap, they couldn't get a complete STR profile. So when they entered it into CODIS, the only thing it produced is it is a male, just like the court docs state. And that happened on November 20th. Then November 29th, 2022, they tried to send it off to Othram Labs to attempt to get an SNP profile made. But then on December 1st, Farley's returned to the Latah County Jail. Sometime between then and December 14th, Kopacka's name was given to the investigators. They secured a search warrant for Kopacka on December 14th. As they implemented it, they unalived Kohberger. I believe somewhere in there they found contacts to Bryan Kohberger. I believe Farley told him that Kopaka had somebody he was running around with, and law enforcement was looking for 2 assailants anyways. So then on December 15th, the day they unalive Kopaka, all of a sudden Farley waives his preliminary hearing out of nowhere, and he's bound over to district court. About that time, the same day, they get Kohberger's name. December 16, 2022, the FBI rushes an IGG in reverse and creates a family tree in about 3 days. So December 19th, the plea deal, Rule 11 plea agreement that never happens, goes through for Farley. He gets the deal of the century. And on that same day, the FBI names Kohberger in the IGG. That is what I believe happened, and Kohberger is not guilty. And you know what's interesting to me is through all of my efforts in investigating every little aspect I could possibly investigate into this case, I've come up with a list of conspirators and possible assailants. And the most interesting thing to me is, other than Kelly and Mortensen up there, every single one of these people since November 13th, 2022 have been arrested and incarcerated, or a couple of them actually were incarcerated, but in the meantime, they did bust out of prison and go try to eliminate witnesses that would have knowledge of this. But you can see up here, we've got Farley, who is obviously an informant in protective custody. You've got Rhodes, who I believe is an informant in protective custody because she is still not gone to trial on her second trafficking charge. And I believe that now Mr. Burroughs is working with them, and he is an informant in protective custody because he should have went to trial a long time ago on his trafficking charge. Now, we know that Bailey has been sentenced to a long federal prison sentence, and in his sentence, it stated he cannot be charged with other offenses. So that was the deal he made. And then we've got Mr. Cervantes, who has been sentenced to a long federal prison sentence. Mr. Slocum has been sentenced to a long federal prison sentence. Mr. Gill's the one that kind of scares me a little bit because he is actually out awaiting trial still. I'm not sure how he's pulled that off. But then over here, we've got these two. We got Kohberger's twin here is currently incarcerated for a considerable amount of time. And that's happened since the atrocity. And then we've got Little Eppenhauer, who is currently on the run. He's a little frightful as well. And then we've got Father Kelly, who is incarcerated. And then we've got, of course, the shot callers, Meade and Eppenhauer, who are going to be incarcerated for the rest of their life and possibly put to death after their new trial is finished. Very interesting to me that all of the possible assailants and conspirators are almost all incarcerated for long times on other charges that just so happen to not get publicized that they're involved in the Idaho 4 atrocity. It seems like almost a little conspiracy to me. So anyway, I know we've got a lot of smart people out there working on all aspects of this case, and I think that's wonderful. I think sometimes when they come to conclusions, maybe they don't think about all the ramifications of the conclusions that they're coming to before they really blast it out there and get a lot of simple-minded folks to buy in and then start preaching it like it's gospel, like it's a good thing. And they obviously can't think it through to determine what the heck it is they're saying. So, getting this close to the preliminary hearing and the trial, one thing that I don't want to have happen is all of the narrative out there flow towards Kohberger is guilty, because that's not good. But I also don't want the narrative to flow towards Kohberger is guilty and he is being released due to malfeasance by the FBI using a database that they weren't supposed to use, and a killer walk because of it. That is BS also, and we can't allow that to happen. That is not getting justice for anybody if that happens. So again, just Be careful who and what you believe, because I assure you, things have ramifications. Your belief has ramifications, because if you believe one thing and it ends into Kohberger is guilty, well, then that means all of the discussions out there end. This thing goes to trial. There's a whole world out there waiting to see him be convicted. That's not good. But in the meantime, please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, your criticisms. And until next time, Pavarotti's out.
I was an ordinary boy until I broke the rules my life destroyed.